Hey guys, it's Shaylin and I'm here today with another video. So today I wanted to talk about short fiction and specifically the ways that it made me a better writer. I love short fiction as much as the next 23-year-old with a degree in writing and no foreseeable book deal. I feel like the writing community is just rife and always has been with discussions over whether or not you need to write short stories to be a novelist. Some famous writer, I think it was Ray Bradbury, who really preached this. Write a ton of short stories before you even think about a novel. Don't even go there. And a lot of people have really strong opinions on this. This entire discussion is pointless. It's completely moot. There are plenty of successful novelists who never wrote short fiction first. You don't need to write short fiction first to be a novelist, but at the same time, I also don't think it's a bold statement to say that writing any other form of writing will improve your skills in other forms of writing. So instead of trying to make an argument for whether you should write short stories before you write novels or not, because honestly I don't care, I don't think it matters. If your journey is to just write novels, then that's your writing journey. Writing short fiction will make you a better novelist. Writing novels will make you a better short story writer. Writing poetry will make you a better screenwriter. It's all applicable. All types of writing emphasize different strengths and will enhance different skills. A while ago, I did a video on 3 ways screenwriting made me a better fiction writer. And I'm not a very good screenwriter, but it still did translate to my fiction. It made me better at showing rather than telling. It improved my dialogue, it improved my structure. This whole debate, which seems like it's a heated debate, I don't know, the writing community, we argue about dumb shit, but this is one of the dumbest. Any form of writing will help you with another form of writing. I feel like that's not difficult to comprehend. So I just want to talk about the things that writing short fiction taught me personally. Now, it's not necessarily ground up taught me, but either things that I fully learned or skills that I feel short fiction enhanced, because truly I was a bad writer before I learned how to write short stories. Partly probably is the reason because I was writing short stories in a school writing workshop, so I was getting the highest quality, most detailed feedback I'd ever gotten on my writing. So I have 10 things. Let's start. The first one is probably the most obvious one, and it's concision. But it's not just that writing short stories taught me to write shorter, because I was actually always an underwriter. Short fiction taught me how much you can do in very little space. Comparing a 4,000 word short story that I've written to, let's say, 4,000 words of a novel that I had written prior to learning short fiction. There's nothing in those 4,000 words. These 4,000 words are so much richer, learning to get the most out of very little. Number 2 is probably the biggest example of that, and it's character development. Before I wrote short fiction, feeling like character development was something that needed a lot of time. Who can expect a novelist to have a fully developed character by the end of chapter 1? But the thing is, with a short story, the end of chapter 1 is the whole story. In terms of equivalent word count. So your character needs to not only be fully developed by the end of the story, but they need to be developed page 1, page 2. There's this skill that I literally didn't even know was possible that short fiction taught me, which is just very, very fast character development. And I think it's because I always saw character development as this very slow thing and almost didn't really understand how to use the external aspects of it. So I always was the important thing is that my character has a developed personality, and then they've got this long character arc. I never really knew how to use things like specific details. Using things like voice to convey personality really fast even. I always had these really vivid characters in my mind. They weren't always translating as complexly, as richly as they were to me. I was giving myself way too much room to play, I needed to be in a situation where I was forced to develop a character super fast and learn more efficient, therefore way more powerful ways to do that. Number 3 is very broad, and it's theme and idea. I feel like theme and idea I learned is a much smaller thing than I thought it was, that the theme of your story can just be in that revelation you're making about the character. Theme can almost be this really interesting puzzle where all of the pieces of the story at the end fit together, create this crux that you were going for. It's a really satisfying moment for me when I get a story to click and I know that all the pieces are where they need to be. Short fiction really changed how I thought about theme. Instead of thinking about theme as, this big idea that my story was exploring, my story is exploring family. Seeing that it's actually really specific and it's in the character. And this is even things incorporating symbolism, getting that to do the work that it needs to do, even if it's pretty subtle. This is a hard one to explain because it's theme and it's slippery and vague. Number 4 is creativity. So I think I was creative before. So it's not that short fiction taught me to be creative, but I do think short fiction allowed me to explore my creativity a little more, because one thing that I really like about short stories is that I personally think that they're freer than novel. You can write a short story in one sitting or a couple days. You can try anything. So I could kind of just let loose, write whatever I wanted, try whatever weird shit I wanted to write about. The stakes are so much lower. You don't want to commit to a novel if you're not sure if it can work. And sometimes I think really weird ideas can't sustain themselves for a whole novel. These really strange ideas that I would have that were just like little vague impressions, I never had anything that I could do with them. Getting a chance to explore them, I feel like, has made me a more creative person just because I've had more opportunities to be creative and be more freely creative. Number 5 is form. Form is something that I love. I've talked about form a little in my video on point of view. There's this idea that we talk about in, well, it's talked about in poetry a lot, we talk about it in short fiction, and it's the unity of form and concept. It's how you package the narrative. If the narrative is what happens, form is how you tell it. Everything from the point of view and tense that you choose to how you structure the story. Short fiction allows you to be really playful with form. Writing short fiction again gave me the outlet to really experiment with it. One of the first short stories that I ever wrote in school was like a mixture of a play and a fiction piece, and I wouldn't have thought to do that in a novel, and I probably wouldn't have had the courage to do it because I wouldn't have felt that it would be sustainable. One of the coolest, most fun, complex aspects of writing for me is form and figuring out how I can enhance the story and reveal more about the story and reveal more about the character through the form. I just didn't have a strong grasp of with writing novels because it's hard to play around with that. I think I did it one time in like an early novel, The Definition of Impossible. There was some playing with form. Short fiction helped me play around with all kinds of forms and really learn how to make the most of the form of my stories. Number 6 is line editing. Line editing was the thing that I think I went 0 to 100. Well, maybe not 100, that's saying a lot. From a failing grade to a passing grade. The thing about line editing is that it's something you do late in a piece. And having written a ton of novels as a kid, I'd never gotten deep enough into the process to actually learn how to line edit them. And the other thing about a novel is it takes a long time to line edit a whole novel. I've made a video on prose hacks, it's really old. Applying the things I talked about in that video to your line level requires editing practice more than it does drafting practice. It's really hard to learn all that information and then just instantly apply it to a first draft. You almost have to write a first draft, let it be messy, line edit it like really rigorously, like a bunch of times. All those principles will start to just seep into your first draft and a lot of them will become unconscious. Getting the chance to do 20 drafts. It would take so long to do 20 drafts of a novel. Getting to just do that many drafts strengthened my ability to have stronger prose on the first draft. So the next one is information reveal. I used to find information to be a really difficult thing to navigate in my work. I think with short stories, the thing is it's almost obvious where the information needs to go because you're working with so few scenes. It kind of becomes clear to you where vital pieces of information need to be revealed. Like the story itself is telling you that. Used to not know whatsoever where to put information, and it would lead to info dumps and it would lead to information being put in really awkward places. Short stories taught me how to find the point where the information needs to go. The next one is scene work and scene structure. Wow, when I read back scenes from novels that I wrote, say 4 or 5 years ago, the scenes, they just feel thin. In a short story, you're maybe dealing with 1 to 10 scenes, let's say, whereas in a novel, you're probably dealing with 60, 70, 80, 90, maybe more scenes. If we're talking about strengthening your writer's intuition, studying structure doesn't mean you have to consciously think about save the cat when you're writing a novel, but studying it strengthens your ability to understand structure and do it without thinking about it. And I think it's similar. Writing short fiction gives you the chance to really strengthen your writer's intuition because, especially with scene work, so you're dealing with a handful of scenes, means you can really focus on each scene. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning about concision. You learn to get the most out of those scenes. I was really so bad at scene work before I learned to write short stories. Like, it's actually kind of funny. Number 9 is tackling revisions. I used to hate developmental edits because they're overwhelming. It was really nice for me to be able to learn to do developmental edits on a smaller scale and actually figure out a process that works for me that I could then apply on a larger scale and not just be scared of revision anymore. Unlike before, where I would just kind of panic and freak out. And then the final one is the fluffy one. And it's just trusting my intuition. I think this again comes back to that feeling of stakes. In a short story, the stakes are so low. Before, I might have been scared to trust my gut on things, which I think comes back to what I was saying about being more creative. Maybe being scared to like just let that go. What if I'm wrong? What if I mess up? Whereas with a short story, there's really nothing wrong with just following your gut, even if you don't know what is going on in the story. There have been plenty of stories where I literally had no idea what I was doing until I was deep into the first draft. Some of my favorite things I've ever written have emerged from that, made me better at navigating my own ideas and better at navigating my own writing process. Those are 10 things I learned from writing short fiction, but before we go, I do want to talk about 2 things we're harped, because we do talk a lot about how writing short fiction can help you. I think they're a very worthwhile pursuit, and if they interest you, there's so much you can learn, but if they don't interest you, you probably won't take away the things that I took away because you're not going to be interested in the process. You have to be invested in the process to take something away from it. But I haven't really heard anyone talk about the reverse, which is how writing short stories can make it harder to go to novels. If the advice out from our friend Ray Bradbury, maybe he's not the one who said this. For some reason, I just feel like he's the one who said that you should write like dozens of short stories before you even go near a novel. Maybe I'm just tarnishing his name. I haven't really heard anyone talk about the flip side, which is how hard it can be to write a novel when you are in short story mode. So I obviously wrote novels before I wrote short stories, but I did take a few years off from writing novels to only write short stories, and let me tell you, that switch back was really hard. But the first one is I could not get long ideas anymore. I was so used to dealing with these very little like bite-sized ideas that could be tackled in a very short amount of space that I forgot what a full-length novel idea felt like. Any idea that I got, I just turned into a short story. I didn't get ideas for novels. They were gone, and when I had to get an idea for a novel, it took a lot of effort. It was really difficult. I, even as someone who had written many novels before, found that switch really, really hard. And I can't imagine how hard it would be if you had only written short stories for years, never even thought about a novel because Ray Bradbury banned you from the notion, and then suddenly you were like, it's time to write my novel, and even just getting the idea can be really hard. And then the other thing was huge frustrations with quality. And I had a guest speaker in a class say this once, and I'd never thought about it until she said it, but she said that she found it hard to write novels because it is possible to write a perfect short story, but it's impossible to write a perfect novel. And if anything, that can be the beauty of the novel form. And she was like, once you've written a form that literally has the capability to be perfect, it can be really frustrating to write a form that in its essence will never be perfect. Not that I think I'm capable of writing a perfect short story, but you know, with a short story, it's so much easier to get closer to that goal. Cutting every single unnecessary line, every unnecessary word, everything being as streamlined as possible in a novel simply can't have that, and it can start to be a little frustrating at first. So those are 10 things I took away from writing short fiction. Speaking of short stories, I do have a new short story out in the Manila Review. You can check it out. It's called Solarium. I will leave it linked in the description. It was the runner-up in their fiction contest this year, judged by Heather O'Neill, one of my favorite writers. Heather O'Neill's collection, Daydreams of Angels, was the first collection I ever read. So you can check that out. It is one of the more bizarre things I've written. It's the most stream of consciousness thing I've ever written. I was really surprised that it got shortlisted, and then I was really surprised that it won second place, because I always thought of this story as like a very niche story that maybe not a wide range of people would enjoy. So if you hate it, like, I get it. Like, I hear ya. And it's about a drug addict contemplating whether she should relapse while she's at a spa. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can always send me an ask on Tumblr, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.